I want to congratulate all of you for being here on this training today. I am Eric K. Johnson, podcast talent coach. Many of you know me in this training. I am going to show you exactly how to launch your podcast in 30 days. You're going to discover the step-by-step process to make that happen. I'm also going to teach you a few things that a lot of podcast gurus don't teach you when they're teaching you to launch your podcast. Many people think it's all about the tech and launching that podcast, but it's about so much more than tech. It's actually about the three P's, and we'll get into those in a little bit. Make sure you stay all the way until the end. I have a free gift for you at the end. I'm going to give you my guide, 75 ways to create engagement with your audience. It will make a difference for you, regardless of how you're sharing your content, whether that's through a podcast or social media or any of the like. This guide, 75 ways to create engagement with your audience, will help you create engagement on any platform, which is going to be pretty cool. So I'll help you do that as well. Let me share my screen here and show you exactly what we're jumping into today. So this is how to launch your podcast in 30 days or less. This is the guide I'm going to give you here at the end, 75 ways to drive engagement with your podcast. What I want you to do is play full out today. We're going to take about 60 minutes of your time. What I teach you today can really make a difference in launching your podcast if you take action. However, you have to pay attention while we're going through this. I'm going to move through it quickly. There are a lot of nuances that will help you launch that podcast. Make sure you have a pen and paper handy so you can take some notes. You will walk away from this workshop with the action plan in hand, the entire process to launch your podcast in 30 days. So turn off your distractions, grab a pen and paper, and get ready to launch your show. If you're like me, you love step-by-step processes, and that's what I'm going to give you. 21 steps that you will take to launch your podcast. It's broken down into 5 specific areas to make it super easy, but 21 steps is all it takes. If you're like me and you love easy, you love making it easy, type me in the chat over there, and if you love step-by-step processes and you just love to make it easy, I would love to know that you're in the same boat as me. You will be able to launch your podcast here by the end of this workshop. And I'm going to teach you the exact steps to do that. If at the end you need some more help and some more hand holding to get it launched, I will give you an invitation to come join me in my podcast launch accelerator to help you do that. So, if you would like to attract more clients and generate more revenue for your business, I would like you to type money in the chat. We're all in the same place, and I'm talking to the right people. Type money in the chat for me. Joe, I love the dollar signs. That is awesome. Absolutely. Here's what I need you to understand as we go through the process today. Getting more clients isn't about your podcast. I'm going to teach you how to launch a podcast, but getting more clients isn't about your podcast. It's about who you are on the podcast. It's about who you are being while you're saying what you're saying. And that's the first thing most podcast gurus don't teach you. Getting more clients is about building trust. It's about building relationships with your audience. You hear it so often that people do business with those they know, like, and trust. It's all about building relationships. It's about self revelation. You reveal things about yourself on your podcast that lets people get to know who you are. It lets people get to know if they can trust you and if they like you. And that's the first step to growing your business. To grow your business, you need to build relationships. It's a world of know, like, and trust. It's all about building rapport. Unfortunately, tech is sucking the relationships out of business today. We buy our groceries online. Amazon drops our packages at the front porch. they even run away before you can answer the door and even see who dropped them. Telemarketers are automated. You're even getting AI telemarketers now. You can't even get the joy of yelling at them and hanging up on them because there's nobody on the other end. It's technology. You pay at the pump at the gas station. Everything we do. I went into the grocery store the other day, did my shopping, checked myself out, and left without even talking to anybody. Can you understand what I'm talking about? In the chat, I want you to put one area of your life where tech has removed the relationship, where you no longer talk to anybody when you do relationships or do business with that company. What's one area where you don't talk to uh, any of it? Um, oh, thanks, Joe. Let me see if I can change that around. What if I do this? If I go over here, back here, escape out of this. I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to try and go back over here. No, that's not helping me either. All right, I'm going to do this. No. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to share my slides this way and see if this helps you, Joe. I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go here. How's that? Now do you see the full screen for me, Joe? I appreciate that. Does that show you full screen on self-revelation? All right. Now I can't see the chat. Tech is just not my friend today. Get up there in the corner. No. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try this. I'm going to go here to this, get out of that, and I'm just going to share these slides here. This is going to make it easier. Slide only. There we go. All right. It's going to be a little janky, but you're going to get the idea of it. All right. Here we go. Okay. So, what we're talking about is relationships. This book here is one of the books that I've recently read, and it's called They Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan. In this book, Marcus talks about customers doing a research before they reach out to a company to purchase their products and services. And in this book, Marcus says that prospects, customers, people in the market have done roughly 75% or 70% of their market research before they ever reach out to a company for more information. They've done 70% of the work. So that means by the time they reach you, they're 75 or 70% through the buying process. And I did some research and I found a study that shows that business to business companies show that their potential customers have done between 57 and 70% of their research before they ever reach out to a company. 57 to 70%, their decision is almost made before you even get to talk to them. So if you're not building relationships with your prospects, that's why you're struggling to grow your business. That's why you're struggling to get clients, because they've already gone down the path of doing business. If you're not building relationships, you're missing the boat. And a podcast, in my opinion, is the very best way to share your story, share your authenticity and your expertise, and build those relationships. And in this workshop here, I'm going to give you the steps to build your podcast, but I'm also going to show you how to build those relationships so you're building your podcast in the right way. And at the end, I'm going to show you how you can fast track the process so you can focus on growing relationships and building your business rather than spending all of your time working on your podcast. So if that sounds good, in the chat, what I'd love to see in the chat is who you help and what you help them do. So I kind of have an understand if we're talking to coaches or sales trainers, who you help and what you help them do. If you could post that in the chat for me, kind of understand who's in the room here and who I'm helping attract. So Santu is a coach and a therapist. Ramesh is helping small businesses. Great. I love that. What are you helping small businesses do, Ramesh? Type that in the chat for me too. Love to hear that. Small businesses, Joe helps small businesses increase leads. That's great. Podcasts are a great way to do that, Joe. We're going to show you what that's all about today. So, a little bit about my story. I grew up in radio. This is my first radio gig here in this little Quonset hut here. I grew up in a little uh, three-bedroom house here with my single mom and my brother. Today just happens to be my little brother's birthday. We grew up here. My mom waited tables raising us, and she always had a side hustle. She taught me the love of entrepreneurship, which I absolutely fell in love with. Always wanted to have a business of my own. I ended up going to the University of Nebraska to get my architecture degree. But while I was in architecture, I got a job at this little radio station where my brother worked. And I started falling out of love with architecture and started falling in love with radio. And I made a career of it. Oh, since 1988, I've been in radio. And I've gone on to interview amazing people like George Strait and Ice-T and Zach Brown and Lady Gaga. It's been absolutely fantastic. And over the 30 years of coaching on-air radio talent and podcasters, I've learned how to serve clients and attract listeners. And a lot of podcast gurus will teach you the tech and how to launch your podcast, but few of them will teach you how to build relationships with your audience. And that's what I've done over the past 3.5 decades. We have we have raised hundreds of thousands of bottles of water for the food bank. We have, or for the Open Door Mission. We've held concerts and raised over $1 million for the food bank. If you zoom in on that check, it's 1 million. $14,527 we raised for the food bank. That comes from relationships. That comes from activating the audience. And businesses pay me to endorse them. Credit unions, Cox Communications, Twizzlers, Wendy's, I've endorsed all of them because they understand I have a relationship with the audience and they want to pay to tap into that relationship. And I value relationships so much. Um, I've been the dean of podcasting for 48 Days Eagles. I've been on stage at Podcast Movement. I'm a partner with Dave Jackson on his show, the podcast review show through the School of Podcasting. It's opened amazing doors for me and created even more powerful relationships. But as I fell out of love with radio, I discovered podcasting and started falling in love with podcasting. And I realized that if podcasters knew just some of the strategies we used in radio, their shows could be so much more powerful. And I fell into a book that was called The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. In the chat, post up if you've ever read The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. It's a fantastic book. If you haven't read it, I would highly recommend it. Because as I was starting on my podcasting journey and building my business, I discovered all of these great gurus like Brendan Burchard, his Millionaire Messenger. I bought that. I bought Jeff Walker's Product Launch Formula. I bought Russell Brunson's ClickFunnels. I was throwing all kinds of money out the window, and I didn't have a whole lot to show for it. And that's when I discovered Chet Holmes. And the ultimate sales machine, because all these gurus said just send an email to your list and the money starts rolling in. But what I realized is you needed an audience in order to have a list, and you needed to have that audience to leverage that attention. And I thought, well, all these other gurus are doing it. Why can't I? Well, I realized that even though you need a list, it's not just about the list. It's about the quality of the list. It's about the quality of your list, not necessarily the size of your list. So many podcasters ask me, how big should my audience be? How big is big enough? How big is good enough? And it doesn't really matter what the size is. It matters the quality, because if you can have an audience that takes action and purchases what you have to offer, you can make money with your podcast. And it's the same way with your email list and your YouTube channel. If you have a relationship with them and you can inspire them to take action, you're going to be able to grow your business and grow your impact. So I read this book. Let me share my screen again. So I read this book, The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. And he's talking about the sales process. So the sales process is broken down into 4 steps: building rapport with your audience, qualifying your audience, making sure they're right for you and you're right for them, educating them on your solution, and then closing the sale. But so many people treat these 4 steps as equal, and they're not really. In the sales process, roughly 40% of your time should be built or spent building rapport, building relationships with your audience. 30% should be qualifying your audience. They need to figure out if they're right for you. You need to figure out if you're right for them. 20% is educating, and 10% is actually closing the deal. And if you use your podcast correctly, you can do the first 70% through your podcast. You can build rapport and build relationships with your audience, and you can qualify them, show them exactly who you help, what you help them do, and why, so they can qualify themselves. And then by the time you're ready to have a conversation with them, guess what? They're 70% through the buying process and their research. Very similar to what we talked about in that first book. If you can show your audience who you are and what you do, you have such a powerful connection with them that you're able to move them through the sales process without all of the struggle that comes with the sales call, because they already know you, they already like you, and they already trust you. And that's the big thing that you're able to accomplish with your podcast. So in The Ultimate Sales Machine, Chet Holmes says that of your entire prospective audience, let's say the market that you sell to, of the market, 3% of that market is buying today. They're actively looking to make a purchase to solve their problem. Another 7% of the market could possibly be convinced to buy it today. So that's 10%. Another 30%, they aren't currently thinking about it. They need more information and education. So you might be selling cars, but I don't need a car today. I'm probably going to need a car a year or two from now, but not today. So I'm not really in the market today. Another third don't think they need it today because they think the solution they have today is just fine. You may be selling mattresses and they're like, my mattress is fine. But if you educate them and explain that mattresses wear out in 7 to 10 years and they've had theirs for 15, they probably need a new mattress. They're like, oh, I didn't know that. I needed more education. Now I'm ready to buy. And then the last 30%, they're probably not in your market. Maybe you're selling Apple computers and they're a PC user, or you sell Toyotas and they drive Fords. So that 30% isn't going to be in your market unless something changes. Maybe they quit working for Ford and now they want to buy a Toyota, or maybe they've seen the light and they want to switch to Mac. Uh, so if you're only selling to the people buying today, you're only selling to 3% of your market. Even if you're selling to the other 7% that could be talked into buying today, you're only selling to 10% of the market. That means you're missing 90% of the market if you're only selling to people buying today. Now, instead, if you're if you're building relationships with the entire market, now when they're ready to buy, they already have a relationship with you. So those people that don't need what you have today, but they need it a year from now, you're going to have a relationship with them so that when they're ready to buy, they're going to think of you. You're building the relationship with your podcast. If all you're doing is selling, you're missing 90% of the market. So use your podcast to attract your ideal clients and use your podcast to build relationships. And that's what I've created to teach you today, is how to systematically launch your show in a month so you can start building those relationships and attracting your ideal clients. This is Ann Sullivan. She came to me. Ann teaches harp, and she taught harp one-to-one in a face-to-face setting like most music teachers do. And then COVID hit. And so she had to move her business online, but she needed a way to attract her clients. So she wanted to launch a podcast. She came to me to launch her podcast. We got it launched in 30 days. And then all of a sudden, Anne had more business than she could handle. She started hiring other teachers to teach for her as well. So now she not only teaches harp, she has an entire staff that teaches harp, and she's grown her business more than she could ever imagine. This is Tavana Denise. Tavana was a nurse, but nursing was sucking the life out of her. So she pivoted into entrepreneurship. She got out of nursing, became an entrepreneur, and all of a sudden she had all of these other nurses coming to her saying, "How did you do it? How did you get out of nursing? I want to do that too." And pretty soon, Tavana was coaching all of these other nurses to do the same thing, but she needed a way to attract all of these nurses to her services and spread her message. So she came to me. We launched her podcast in 30 days. She started marketing her roundtable discussions on her podcast and inviting these nurses to come to the discussion and join her in talking about entrepreneurship. And from there, she led them into her coaching program. She took action, got her podcast launched in 30 days, and was able to create a great business around it and support that business with the podcast by building a fantastic show. All right. On your show, you can do a solo show by yourself. You can interview others. You can do a combination of both. You can have a co-host if you'd like. There are so many great ways to do your show. In the chat, type in what you're considering. Are you considering a solo show? Are you considering a co-hosted show? Are you going to interview other people? What are we thinking about? Alexi's talking about a solo show. All right. Solos and interviews. Joe, I like it, Joe. That's the great thing about podcasting. It's your show. You can do whatever you want. You can switch anytime you want. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Santu's going to co-host interviewing others. Lisa wants to do an interview show. All great ideas. I love it. Solos and interviews. Ramesh, that's kind of what I do. I did solo for about the 275 episodes of my podcast. And then I started interviewing other people because I got tired of talking to myself. The great thing about podcasting is you can do it however you'd like to do it. This is Greg Payne. Greg came to me. We launched the Cool Grandpa podcast. He talks to grandpas about how to make a stronger connection with their grandkids. And after we launched this show, we started growing it. And he went from 300 to 400 downloads a month to 854 in a month. And halfway through the following month, he was already at 718 because we built it on the right foundation and we started getting him in front of the right people to grow his audience. Rocky Lalvani did the same thing. Rocky is the Profit Answer Man. He is educated in Mike Michalowicz's Profit First. And after he came through and we helped him double his downloads as well. Rocky says, while most people focus on equipment, Eric focuses on the listener and how you can serve them. And that's what it takes to build the right sort of podcast. We focus on your listener. There are 3 ways to share your audience or your content. You can share it via audio through a podcast. You can share it through video like YouTube, or you can share it on a written word like a blog. I love podcasting, but I love podcasting for a variety of reasons. First, there are about 600 million blogs. That number has been pretty steady for years. There are now roughly about 63 million YouTube channels. This 51 million was back in 2022. So well over 60 million YouTube channels. There are about 3.5 to 4 million podcasts, depending on how you define a podcast. A lot of people assume podcasts on YouTube are also podcasts. So this number varies. 3.5 to 4 million podcasts, but there are only about half of those that are actively publishing current content. So there are only about 2 million podcasts putting out new content on a regular basis. So you have to ask yourself, where do you want to be? Do you want to be one of 3.5 million, or one of 600 million. The room is wide open for you there. That you have a much easier time getting noticed with a podcast than with a blog or a YouTube channel. The other reason I love podcasting is that it's portable. You can consume a podcast while you're doing other things. You can consume a podcast while you're running or exercising, driving, showering, riding a bike. It's kind of hard to watch a YouTube video while you're riding a bike. I guess it's possible, but not real safe. So podcasting's portable. You can do it while you're doing other things, and it's growing like crazy. 39% of the US population over the age of 12 listen on a weekly basis. 109 listened last month alone, and it's experiencing a 40% growth over the last 3 years, according to the Nielsen Company. The bottom line with podcasting is the future is bright. But the question is, are you leveraging your content to its greatest potential to build those relationships with your audience? Just imagine what it would be like if you were able to build a relationship with your ideal prospect week after week after week. Type in the chat, if you were able to just get one more client on an annual basis, what would that be worth to you? What could you, a lifetime value of one client be if you were able to just use your podcast to get one client? How much would that be worth to you over the lifetime value? And if you don't have a perfect lifetime value, you can estimate that. I'd love to see that in the chat. Just how much getting one client would affect not only your business, but your life. Now, launching a podcast is super easy. Thank you, Ramesh. Podcast is super easy. But the question is, can you see the power of podcasting? Can you see the power of being able to build these relationships? You get to have a conversation with your ideal prospect every week. And not only that, they subscribe to it so they can come and hear you talk to them every single week. Are you leveraging your content to your fullest potential? Let me show you the 5 steps to launch a podcast. First, before I do that, I want to give you a resource. Let me stop sharing here real quick. I'm going to give you a quick resource, and I'm going to put it here in the chat. Let me pull it up real quick. It's my podcast launch checklist. All right. So let me pull this up real quick for you. All right. I'm going to put this here in the chat. If you go to podcasttalentcoach.com/launch checklist, you're going to be able to download the launch checklist. It looks just like this, and it has this. These are the 21 steps. All right. If you go to podcasttalentcoach.com/launch checklist, you're going to be able to download that. No opt-in necessary. Just click on it and you can download it. It will go through that. You can follow along on those 21 steps as I show you them here. So the 21 steps are broken into 5 big steps. The first one is your foundation. The second one is recording the show. Third step is edit the show. Fourth step is to upload the show and then distribute it to everybody else. All right. A lot of people think when you create a podcast, you distribute it out to all of the podcast players. That's not what you do. You upload it to your audio host, and your audio host distributes it to everybody. Makes it so much easier. So let me show you how this is done. We're going to walk through all of these steps. So the foundation, this is the piece that most experts miss. This is where most podcasts fail because they don't do this step. So the first piece of the foundation is defining your why. Why do you want to have a podcast? What is the podcast going to make possible for your business? And how is it going to affect your life? You have to have a strong why to get in there. Many people tell me their why is to leave their mark on the world and have some impact. Growing the business would be nice, but I want to leave a legacy. When you have a strong why like that, it'll make creating your podcast every week so much easier. You need to define your topic. Most of you have an idea of what topic you want to talk about. It has something to do with your business. You need to develop your target listener, that ideal listener that you want to attract, so we can have a conversation with that listener each and every week. You need to develop your show name. You don't want to get too cute for the room. but you do want it to explain exactly what your show is all about. Make sure that there are a lot of podcasts that use the same name. If you go look at the Better Business podcast, you'll probably find 6 shows all titled the same thing. So find something that stands out. Then you need to create your graphics that conform to the Apple Podcast standards. And then what sort of style are you going to create for your podcast? Is it going to be conversational? Is it going to be educational? Are you going to be over the top? Is it going to be a debate? What kind of style are we going to have in our conversation each and every week? This is the foundation. These are the 6 principles that will help you build the relationships with your audience. When you know your topic, when you know your why, when you have a clear picture of your ideal target listener, it will help you build relationships with your audience because you know exactly what they want and you can use your target listener as a filter for all of your content. Then the next step is to record the show. So when you record the show, we need to set aside some production time. So when I say production time, it's like what part of the or what time during the week will you have an opportunity to get into the studio and record? It's best if you can. It's best if you can do this on a regular basis, like every Saturday morning at 10 or every Wednesday night at 7. Because if you can get in the habit of producing it on a regular basis, you'll be much more consistent in your production. So set aside some production time, define your process exactly, um, exactly where you want to go, how the process will work. So the biggest thing about the process is that people don't have a process in place that I'm teaching you right here to produce their video or to produce their podcast on a regular basis. And because they have no process, they um, they feel like their podcast is eating up their entire week. They don't have a system in place where they methodically produce their podcast every week in a short span of time so they can work on their business. They feel like they're producing their podcast all week long, only to start producing the next episode. And when you can create a process like I'm teaching you today, where you go in and you knock out your podcast in a couple hours once a week, or you batch it and you do it in a half a day for the entire month, that leaves you more room to work on your business. And when you can work on your business can grow so much faster. So just create a process where you can uh, create your episodes each and every week. You need to buy your equipment. It's pretty easy. A lot of people think you need a really expensive microphone and mixers and all of that nonsense. You don't need that. You need 3 pieces of equipment. You need a USB microphone, like the one I'm speaking in now, that plugs right into your computer. I recommend the Samsung Q2U. I will put that in the chat. Samsung Q2U. It's a great USB microphone. Costs you about $75 on Amazon right now. It's super easy. You don't have to go spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a microphone. Just get one that's good. You need a computer and you need a set of headphones or earbuds so you can hear what you're doing. Makes it super easy. Don't get a lot of equipment. You need to define how to record. Are you going to record your solo show straight into audio software? Are you going to record an interview style show through Zoom? We just need to define how we're going to record our episode. Then we need to schedule our interviews. If you're doing an interview style show, get yourself a calendar, get interviews on the calendar. And then you need to recreate your open and your close. Your show open tells everybody what the podcast is all about. The episode introduction tells them what this particular episode is all about. Your show open should be consistent over every episode. So it tells people who are new to the podcast what the podcast is all about. I have a podcast introduction template that will help you create that show open. You just fill in the blank, kind of like Mad Libs. It's pretty easy. All right, so we've got our podcast recorded. Now what do? We have to edit it. There's a free audio software called Audacity. You can look it up. It's free to download. That will help you edit your show. And if you can edit a Word document, you can edit audio. It's all the same. It's cut, paste, copy, delete, drag, and move. All of the same actions you do in Word, you can do in Audacity. You have to select your music if you want to use music under your intro and any sound effects. Then we're going to export our audio as an MP3. A lot of people export it as a WAV file. WAV files are 10 times bigger as MP3s. So you want to export it as an MP3. If you can export a Word document to a PDF, you can export audio as an MP3. Super easy. We talked a little bit about file size. Make sure it's an MP3 and not a WAV file. You can also record in mono instead of stereo. Mono is half the size of stereo tracks. The reason you want smaller file sizes is because you don't want it to take up too much space on your listener's device. All right. Next is upload it to your hosting. A hosting site is like a storage unit for all of your audio. So it's like Libsyn or Blueberry. There's a variety of audio hosts out there that will host your podcast for you. And you upload your audio into this audio host every time you have a new episode, and it gets automatically ingested into all of the podcast players like Apple and Spotify and all the rest. I prefer Libsyn. Libsyn is Libsyn. If you use the coupon code PTC, short for Podcast Talent Coach, you'll get your first month for free at Libsyn. That's my affiliate link. I've used Libsyn since I started my podcast, and they are super awesome, but there's plenty of other options out there for you to choose. Pricing of your hosting will all come down to how much storage you have uploaded, how many megabytes of audio you're using, which goes back to your file size. You want to use MP3s, so you're using less storage on your audio host. Then you want to post it on Facebook, post it on your website so people can access it. So now that it's out there, we need to distribute it. So we need to get it to Apple and Spotify and iHeartRadio and all the rest. And in order to distribute it, we take what's called the RSS feed from Libsyn and we provide it to all of the platforms. The RSS feed is like it's like the address of your storage unit. And so when you take your RSS feed and you distribute it to all of the platforms like Apple will start pinging your audio host every 5 minutes. And whenever they see something new, they'll ingest it into their platform. So you only have to connect your hosting service to all of the platforms one time, and then it's all done. So it's a one-time shot, and you never have to do it again. So of these 21 steps, 12 of them are one time only, and then the other 9 you do on a regular basis as you create your episode every week. So foundation and distribution are only done once. Record, edit, upload, those are done each time you create an episode. Now all it's left to do is promote it. So the 3 P's are you want to publish, you want to promote, and you want to profit. And that's the key to creating a successful podcast. You have to get out and build your audience. If you build it, they will come only happens in the movies. Many people stop here. They don't get to the promote. Most gurus miss. And the problem is that a lot of podcasts fade away after 7 episodes because of 3 very specific reasons. And I'm going to give you those reasons here. But first, before I go into the 3 reasons podcasts fail and fade away and what you can do to prevent that, I want to spend a few minutes going over a very special offer I created for you to help you quickly and easily take action and launch your podcast the correct way to grow your business. Is that all right? Can I show you a few things on how I can help you fast track this whole thing? Most most people come to a webinar like this and they take a lot of great notes, and nothing ever happens. They never take action because they don't have any accountability. And that's what I want to help you achieve, is some accountability. The question is, where do you start? My podcast launch accelerator is designed to walk you through this entire process in 30 days. We develop your purpose, your program, and your platform. So that's your why. That's the format of your show. And that's what you're going to talk about on your show. And then I show you how to produce it, record it, and edit it, how to publish it, and how to promote it. The Podcast Launch Accelerator provides you everything you need to launch your podcast in 30 days. So by the end of the program, you will have your podcast published to the world. You're going to lay the foundation to be known as an influencer. You're going to begin building powerful, profitable relationships. But more importantly, you're going to free up your time. You're going to free up your time so you can work on your business and grow it. I mean, how great would it be to be able to follow a plan day by day to launch your show quickly and easily without guessing, without going out and watching a million YouTube videos trying to figure out which one's right. You just take action, follow a plan, and start publishing. What I'd like you to do in the chat, how long have you been thinking about launching a podcast? Can you put that in the chat for me? How long have you been considering this? Joe says 3 years. 3 years. There's no accountability, right? We got to take action and we got to start doing this. And that's why I want to give you these steps and how to do it. So many people tell me they've been planning to start a podcast. Unfortunately, that plan never comes to reality because they never take action. And I have this step-by-step plan for you to follow, so you can stop all the trial and error and stop searching for the right process and just follow it. I mean, what would it mean to the growth of your leads if you had an easy way to connect to the big fish that were your ideal clients each and every week and have that conversation with them? Now, I can't guarantee you're going to make money from your podcast because only you know the viability of your topic and your abilities and your willingness to work hard. But I can guarantee that this blueprint will give you the framework to see what's possible and to launch in 30 days if you just take action. The Podcast Launch Accelerator comes with 4 live group launch training sessions. This is where I walk you through every step of the way to launch your podcast in 30 days. I'm on the calls with you, walking you every step of the way. It's a $1,497 value because you and I hold your hand and walk you every step of the way to get launched. You get lifetime access to the recordings, so you can go back and revisit them. If we have the call on Tuesday and on Thursday you forgot what I said, you can go back and check the video and watch that and get over any hurdle that you have. And if you want to watch it a year from now, you can do that too. That's a $1,497 value. You have a full online toolkit. I mentioned a little earlier, I have that podcast intro template. That's just one of the 36 tools inside of this toolkit. It is a culmination of all of my expertise and experience over 35 years in radio and a dozen years helping podcasters grow their business and grow their podcast into this library. It's a $497 value. You get full access to that as well. You get access to my private podcast launch accelerator group. It's a Facebook group where you can get in and ask your questions and get them answered in between calls. So you're never stuck. That's a $497 value. That's like coach in a box whenever you need it. You get a one-on-one call with me. So we ensure that your podcast strategy is built on the proper foundation and you're headed where you need to go. That's a $250 value. You and me one-on-one, making sure you're getting over all of the hurdles that you need to overcome. You also get lifetime access to all future calls, versions, and updates. If you don't launch on your first try and you want to come back and do it again, come on back. You want to launch a second podcast? You could come do that as well. It's a $1,497 value, which takes the full total value of this program to $5,735. Now, you know as well as I do that I'm not going to charge you 500 or $5,735. Enrollment is just $997 to have your podcast launched in 30 days. But I have some bonuses for you as well, because once you launch, you're going to have some challenges to overcome. I'm going to give you my Creating Powerful and Unique Podcast Interviews course. This will help you create great interviews, just like I do when I interview Blake Shelton or Lady Gaga or George Strait or all the rest. It's $197 on my website. I'm going to give that to you for free to make sure that you are set up to interview all of the great guests you're going to have, just like I do. Rock your next podcast interview like a radio pro without hours of prep and decades of experience. Bonus number 2, you get a ticket to the Audience Explosion Blueprint, because once you have your podcast built, we're going to need to grow the audience. So my 3-day Audience Explosion Blueprint event happens right after the course wraps up. It's a $197 ticket. You're going to be able to come to that for free. And I have one more bonus for you. As an additional bonus, once you get through that, you're going to get an additional one-on-one call with me where I make sure that you're headed in the right direction so you can accomplish all of your goals with your podcast and with your business. So that takes the total value up to $6,379. Now, if you were able to get one client, would $997 be worth it? If you were able to just land one client from your podcast, it could more than make up for that in lifetime value. But because you're here today, it's not going to be $997. I'm going to let you enroll today for $497. Now, if all this did was help you build powerful, profitable, personable relationships with your target listener, your ideal clients, and grow your authority and have more impact on the world, would $497 be worth it? It's $497. You can enroll at podcasttalentcoach.com/PLA. Whoops, I'm moving the wrong thing. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it over in the chat so you can have it right there and click on it. Podcasttalentcoach.com/PLA. I don't have the HTTP in front of it. It may not work as a link for you, but you know how to get there. All right. So I want you to come join us. Of course, I'm going to give you a guarantee because I don't want you to spend your $497 and not get launched. So my guarantee is that it's a guaranteed to launch guarantee. If you get through this program and you don't get launched, I will work with you until you launch. I will work with you and make sure you get launched. You can enroll at podcasttalentcoach.com/PLA, and I will get you enrolled. Classes begin Tuesday, October 22nd, and I want you to get in and get enrolled so we can get your podcast launched coming up in just 30 days. All right. Let me quickly explain to you why most podcasts fade away and why they don't make it past 7 episodes. The first reason is podcasters realize that podcasting is more work than they thought it was going to be. Well, it's more work than they thought it was going to be because they don't have a step-by-step process to methodically create their episodes each and every week. I teach you the right way to build it in the Podcast Launch Accelerator, so you're not guessing. So podcasting isn't eating up your entire week. I want you to spend a couple hours creating a great episode so you can spend the rest of the week building your business, working on your business. That's what Podcast Launch Accelerator helps you accomplish. We build the foundation, we build the purpose, the program, and the platform. And then we get you started in the right direction. Second reason podcasts fade away is the podcast doesn't grow as fast as they thought it would. Well, that's because they have no promotion strategy. They don't have any strategy to get out and get in front of people who don't know them and invite them into their world. And that's what I show you how to do at the Audience Explosion Blueprint. And the third reason podcasts fade away after 7 episodes is because it doesn't generate revenue as fast as they thought it would. That's because they have no business system. They didn't build the business behind the podcast. And I show you how to launch your podcast in the right way so it grows your business. So it helps you attract your ideal clients and build the relationships so you can grow your business and generate revenue. That's what Podcast Launch Accelerator is all about, building relationships. It gives you authority in your niche. You can build relationships with coaching clients. You can promote your products, your physical products, and send people to your website to buy them. You can answer questions from your audience and build relationships that way. You can bring current clients on and interview them to show your listeners exactly how you coach. You can upsell the current clients. You can invite prospects on your show who won't take your cold call or your sales call, and you can interview them to open doors and have sales conversations with people. You can interview your partners so they will promote you, and you can interview your peers as well. Podcasting is such a powerful way to do all of it. And I would love to have you join us at Podcast Launch Accelerator. Enrollment is just $497. You can enroll at podcasttalentcoach.com/PLA. And to get that 75 ways to drive engagement with your audience, when you go to podcasttalentcoach.com/PLA and scroll all the way to the bottom, you're going to see a link at the bottom to download that free gift. My gift to you just for being here and spending time with us today. If you have any questions, I can answer those in the chat for you. Any questions about podcasting in general? A lot of people want to know how long it takes to create a podcast. It usually takes a couple hours a week. Some of my clients record all of their episodes at the beginning of the month and then drip them out over the month. Instead of working on it every week, they work on it once a month. How long should your podcast be is a common question I get. It only needs to be as long as it needs to be. Podcast, half of the top 200 are longer than an hour, half of the top 200 are shorter than an hour. My coach always told me no such thing as too long, only too boring. So it only needs to be as long as it needs to be. The more important question is uh, should you be consistent? And the length isn't as important as consistency. If you're going to do a 30-minute podcast, try to do a 30-minute podcast every week so your listeners um, get in the habit of spending a half hour with you every week. People are creatures of habit, so give them roughly the same length every week. Can you allow people to start their video? I think I did. Yeah, you should be able to start your video. I have it linked there anyway. Any other questions on podcasting? You just post those in the chat. Lisa said she signed up for VIP. What does that entail? VIP was with the summit, Lisa, and so you'll get an email with a ton of summit bonuses to that summit. Any other questions? How often should you publish your podcast? You should publish your podcast once a week. A lot of people want to do it daily. Daily is far too much work. You don't have that kind of time. I would not recommend you biting off a weekly or a daily podcast. Less than a week, you're not present enough in front of your audience. People are creatures of habit, and they typically run on a weekly cycle. They go to church once a week. They go bowling once a week. That sort of thing. So what I would recommend is you publish your podcast once a week. The day of the week doesn't necessarily make much difference. The great thing about podcasting is that people are able to listen whenever they want. It's on demand content. And so they listen to the podcast when it's best for them. And so if you release it on Wednesday and they want to listen on Saturday, they'll listen on Saturday. So the day of the week doesn't necessarily matter. What matters is that you're consistent and you release the same day and time every week. Can YouTube videos be turned into podcasts? Absolutely. That's what I recommend, Ramesh. If you have the bandwidth, record the video first. You'll post the video to YouTube. YouTube helps you get discovered, and then take the audio from the podcast and turn that into your podcast, or the audio from the video, turn that into the podcast. Then take a transcript or AI generated show notes and use that as your blog post. So you're all three. So it helps in the search engines and that sort of thing. Um, the thing I love about podcasting is that on your phone, your podcast shows up in the feed every time you send out a new episode. Those that are subscribed to it or following it, it shows up right on their phone. Where YouTube sometimes sends you push notifications, but not consistently. Even if you're subscribed to a YouTube channel, you don't get that notification um, every time a new video's out. So I love that strategy. Um, I wasn't able to attend the last day of the summit. Can I get a recording for it? If you're VIPZ, VIPs get recordings of all the summit. So if you haven't gone VIP, go VIP. You'll get all 3 days recording. Yes. Latara says, does monthly work? Monthly is much slower, Latara. So if you're doing a monthly podcast, people are only spending time with you once a month. And so imagine if you had lunch with your best friend every week, and then you had lunch with your not so best friend once a month. You would have a much stronger relationship with the friend that you were eating with every week than you would every month. What I would recommend is record it once a month and then drip it out weekly. Maybe you record a 2 hour episode and cut it into four 30-minute chunks. And so four smaller episodes over the month make up the one big episode for that theme for the month or something like that. You want people to get in the habit of spending time with you. Um, I think do, 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 do. I think that's all the questions that I have in the chat. Let me post up one other thing. If you go to podcasttalentcoach.com/launch workshop, if I could type right. Did I spell it right? Yeah. Um, that is the link to this workshop. So if you want to join next Tuesday or the following Tuesday, you can come back and join us again there. I would love to have you be part of Podcast Launch Accelerator. You can enroll at podcasttalentcoach.com/PLA. And if you have any questions in the future, by all means, shoot me an email at eric@podcasttalentcoach.com. And I will see you again next go around. All right. Thanks for being here, everybody.